Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It's the end of an era in Ocean Beach. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. City officials announced today that repairing the OB Pier is no longer feasible. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says it's staying closed to the public while the city works on replacing it.
High surf damaged the Ocean Beach Pier last October, prompting the city to close it. A few months later, the upper part of a pile broke off and fell into the ocean.
Going through all the structural analysis, we determined that repairs are not structurally and financially feasible.
Replacing the pier is expected to cost at least $170 million. A pier renewal project has been underway since last spring, including community meetings. The city expects to publish an updated design this fall. City staff are working on getting environmental permits and grant funding.
If we could successfully obtain the environmental permit and all the funding needed identified for the construction, we are looking at 5 to 6 years before we have another functioning pier.
Ocean Beach resident Kevin Meir says preserving such an iconic San Diego landmark is worth the wait.
I brought my children out here when they were babies, and now they're 30 years old, and they still remember coming out to the pier. It's like the pier in Chicago or the pier in Santa Monica. It's an icon that should be appreciated and rebuilt with thought.
The pier opened in 1966. A 2018 study found it was past its useful life. It's been temporarily closed several times in recent years because of surf and storm damage. The city says a taller pier will also account for rising sea levels. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
It is a little cooler out there for the weekend. We're looking pretty good for a comfortable time over the next couple of days here. It is a little breezy through the mountains, the canyons, and the passes. Tonight we'll get down to 59 in El Cajon, 67 for your low in San Diego, and into the interior. A lot of variety there from 50 in Campo to 66 into Borrego Springs. This is a cooler air mass, though, and there are areas within a few hundred miles to our north up in the highest elevations seeing their first flakes of the late summer. How about that? We'll have your full forecast coming up.
Well, this week, San Diego's congressional leaders applauded a new contract to expand the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant. But the mayor of Imperial Beach says it falls short of what is needed to fix the cross-border pollution crisis. The International Boundary and Water Commission says it will use more than $400 million in federal funding to double the plant's capacity and eliminate up to 90% of untreated wastewater from reaching the coast. In response, Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre said the projected timeline of 20 months for design and up to 5 years for construction is unacceptable. She called on the Biden-Harris administration to prioritize immediate action to address the escalating pollution crisis in the Tijuana River. It has led to nearly 1,000 consecutive days of beach closures. San Diego County is trying to help households in the South Bay deal with strong odors from cross-border sewage flows. They're handing out hundreds of free air purifiers. But KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says not everyone is happy with how that program is rolling out.
The county has been using a lottery system to distribute the purifiers, asking residents to enter the drawing and then picking out the winners at random. Officials argue that's the fairest approach, since they have just 400 purifiers to give out across Imperial Beach, Nestor, and San Ysidro, an area of more than 100,000 people. But that lottery system isn't sitting right with everyone.
It's a joke to be raffled off. Anybody could apply for it.
Jared Caswell runs a local shuttle service in Imperial Beach and serves on the city's Chamber of Commerce. He says the county should have prioritized the most affected neighborhoods and people with health conditions or disabilities.
Some people are going to win them. Do they need them? Maybe. Do they need them as bad as others? Probably not. And they should have went to the worst case first.
Caswell thinks next time local governments should get to figure out how to distribute the devices. County officials say they did focus on reaching out to seniors and poorer families with children to let them know the lottery was happening. The purifier program is a sign of growing recognition that the cross-border sewage flows created by Tijuana's broken wastewater system are also polluting the air, something South Bay residents have raised concerns about for years, but the researchers and regional air quality agencies have largely failed to examine. In Imperial Beach, Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
As school starts back up for students across San Diego, many families are struggling to find affordable after-school care. KPBS's Katerina Portela says this year, many programs have long wait lists.
A year ago, free after-school care program Primetime expanded to several new schools, reaching more San Diego families. This year, things are different. Wait lists are overflowing, and many San Diego families are left with nowhere to go.
We're in a position where we don't even have the option of paid child care.
Roman and Mia? Okay, they'll be out in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Denise Hassan is a working mother of 3.
So that is what stresses me out the most, because we both work full-time and we don't know what the care for our children will look like once the school year begins.
KPBS spoke to her last year when her 3 sons had just been accepted to Primetime. This year, she reapplied and ended up 40th on the wait list. And now, the paid option is full too. Hassan had been told by a Primetime employee that as a returning parent, she would have priority in the enrollment.
Had I known that there was even any chance that I wouldn't have been at least prioritized as a returning family, then I would have kept my space in the paid program, because we're a family with 3 children and we need after-school care. It's really not optional for our family.
At her children's school, Marvin Elementary, the waitlist jumped from 0 to 128 kids just this year. And it's not the only one. The overall number of students on the Primetime waitlist is 4 times more than last year.
Our goal is to continue to increase to serve those families.
Christiane Trout McPhee, the manager of Primetime's summer and extended day programs, says that the program is doing its best to accommodate the large number of applicants.
We're doing the best that we can with staffing, and every year all families have to reapply because there's never a guarantee. We're really doing every effort on our end, and if families could just reach out to the school to see what other options are available, or they're welcome to contact my office and I'll see what we can do to help support them.
Primetime expanded to 19 new schools this year. Most schools had more spots this year, but for 36 schools, the number actually decreased. The average cost of after-school care is $500 a month if families can even get a spot. If they have to look outside of their school, it can cost over $800 a month. These prices are exactly why the free program Primetime has become such a competitive commodity.
There's definitely a need. I've spoken to many families. The majority of the families who I've spoken with were not reaccepted into the program, so there's a lot of us, and that just demonstrates that at our school site there's a bigger need than what's currently accommodated.
Many elementary schools get out around 2 and noon every Wednesday. And as more and more families become working parents, childcare has become more essential. Shelby Jennings Gomez is the executive director of childcare at the San Diego County YMCA.
Childcare is absolutely critical to a family's ability to work or go to school and do what they need to do to take care of their family. So anytime that families can have access to a quality free childcare program that meets their needs in terms of the time that it's offered, the location that it's offered, and meeting the needs of their individual child, that is such a burden lifted off of a family that is struggling to survive in this high cost of living county that we have.
Hassan and other parents were also blindsided by a new sign-up change this year. In previous years, parents had a week to submit their applications. This year, it was first come, first serve. And parents who applied just 20 minutes late didn't get a spot. The reason for the change, according to San Diego Unified, is a new grant this year that requires homeless and foster youth to be prioritized. Toby Pace, Senior Director of Early Learning Opportunities at San Diego Unified, says the more narrow priority group paired with an influx of people is causing the larger wait lists.
Primetime's getting a lot more notoriety and it's growing. So literally back in 2022, I think our number was we had about 11,000 students interested. This year, we have over, I think just interested in applying, we have over 15,000 200 almost right now.
Now the school year has already begun, and with it, the scramble for after-school care. While some families have secured spots at prime time or a paid care program, many feel stuck as waitlists grow and options become more scarce.
Maybe I'm in a little bit of denial and just hoping that space opens up. I really don't know. I don't know what we're going to do at this point.
For KPBS, I'm Katerina Portela.
Starting today, San Diego Sheriff's deputies will no longer be forced to work overtime shifts. Sheriff Kelly Martinez announced the change yesterday. The sheriff's office says the mandatory overtime directive was put in place to meet minimum staffing requirements during the COVID-19 pandemic. Retirements and resignations also led to staffing shortages.
I'm really happy to report that as of August 23rd, our staff will no longer be required to work mandatory overtime shifts. I'm sure and I'm very confident that they'll continue to work the shifts that are necessary on a voluntary basis so that we don't have to impose mandatory overtime. I hope that you'll take a moment to thank our staff when you see them and to understand how much they've stepped up to help all of us through this crisis.
And the sheriff noted that certain positions like dispatchers may still be required to work overtime on a mandatory basis. A San Diego veterans group has started their annual protest against the Miramar Air Show. KPBS military and veterans reporter Andrew Dyer has more on the group and why they are protesting.
Air Force veteran David Patterson stands on the Carroll Canyon Road overpass with members of San Diego Veterans for Peace. Banners hang on a fence telling commuters on Interstate 15 that the air show fuels the climate crisis. Patterson says as veterans, they understand the costs of war.
We know what it does. We've seen what it does to people's families when somebody gets injured or killed. We've seen what happens to nations, and we've seen what kind of destruction we can put on people.
The Miramar Air Show is billed as the country's largest military air show. Hundreds of thousands flock to the base each year to see all sorts of military aircraft, such as the Navy's Blue Angels. For the last 9 years, Veterans for Peace says they've protested the show. Patterson says the unnecessary flights run counter to the Pentagon's efforts to combat climate change.
And yet the Marines over here have this air show with 300,000 people driving their cars down here with the jets polluting the air, and they don't seem to be serious about, helping us mitigate the climate change, the pollutants that we produce.
It's not just the pollution. Patterson says it's wrong to showcase weapons to children and families as family fun. He says the group hopes to change the way people think about the air show.
I would like to see the people that go here for a thrill realize that this is really, it might be a thrill, but it's not good for us. It's not good for the future of our kids. So our answer is just don't go.
Veterans for Peace plan to demonstrate from freeway overpasses weekly until the air show. The base didn't respond to requests for comment. The air show is the last weekend of September. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
This year, a national civil rights organization named Alton, Collier, California's third known victim of racial terror lynching. In 1946, he was attacked on the Coronado Ferry and left to drown. A coalition recently formed to memorialize him. KPBS reporter Katie Heisen joined them as they took the next step.
The sand below the ferry landing is the correct spot where we should be digging.
A dozen people gather on Centennial Park shore at dawn. A strip of concrete marks the old Coronado Ferry landing.
This is where he took his last steps. This is for you, Alton Collier. We remember you. We honor you. We're sorry about everything that happened to you, which was totally unfair.
While the tide is out, they dig sand.
In honor of Alton Collier.
At a public ceremony on September 7th, they'll place the sand in a jar with Collier's name and ship it to the lynching memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. Collier was a Black Coronado resident. His death certificate still lists the cause as suicide. Coalition members say this is a step in setting the record straight.
Alton walked here, didn't walk back. He lost his life because of hatred. evil, which still exists today. And we just honor you, Alton. We're sad you're not here and that you didn't get to finish your life.
To hear more of Collier's story, visit kpbs.org. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
It was 1 year ago this week that San Diego experienced a very rare weather event. The remains of a tropical storm blew through our county with wind and record rainfall. It had once been a powerful hurricane, but by the time that it reached this far north, Hillary lost a lot of its punch. But did you know hurricanes can stay strong enough to reach San Diego? It has happened in our history. You just have to go way back in time. Ken Kramer shows us in this story about San Diego.
Believe it or not, recently published in the Journal of the American Meteorological Society, 1858, San Diego and its few hundred people back then were caught totally by surprise when October the 2nd, the wind started up about 11 in the morning. Newspaper accounts describe the wind gradually increasing as the whole heavens seemed to close in. By 1 o'clock, gusts reached 75 miles an hour. Fences and trees went flying. Things became alarming. The barometer dropped to the lowest point the keeper of the tide gauge had ever seen. The portico on the kiln house was torn away. On George Tolman's property, he had a windmill that collapsed. And here on the plaza, there was so much blowing dust and sand that you couldn't see anything. Day became like night. The lighthouse keeper at Point Loma fled, fearing that the tower was about to collapse. The sea was churning and confused. Along the waterfront, 3 schooners were damaged, and it all was followed by a stormy night of rain. Researchers conclude it was indeed a hurricane from the tropics that held together and passed just offshore before heading northwest. With dawn, according to newspaper accounts, the whole city was washed and swept clean as if 1,000 brooms had been laboriously employed for months. Today, nobody would guess that it ever happened. In fact, the general belief is that it can't. Our ocean water's too cold. But let the record show that we really did have a hurricane once, just about a century and a half ago. And it's a documented fact about San Diego.
And if you want to see more of Ken Kramer's stories about San Diego, his half-hour show can be seen every Thursday night at 8 here on KPBS.
We're running a little cooler out there this weekend, but with the change and with any strong front moving through the west, we do get a little bit of breeze, and sometimes wind is not all that welcome here when we're dry, and this is the dry season still, so there is some fire risk associated with the wind. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the wind is coming in off of the Pacific, so there's a slightly higher dew point, a little more humid than if it were an offshore wind coming down from the mountains. Those are the winds, like the Santa Anas to our north, that we really get concerned about. So some fire risk, but not a high fire risk. And we will see some of those coastal clouds each morning, including tonight. Late tonight into tomorrow morning, 67 for your low. So you can see we brought out the light blue here, which is kind of a nice change. We're past that point in the summer where we're just locked into the heat in the interior. We are getting some occasional cold fronts to push through. And this is the strongest so far for the season, if you want to call it that, late summer into the transition to fall. And this is even going to bring some rain showers off to the north and even a few fleeting snowflakes into the highest elevations of the Sierra. We're staying dry this far south. You can see bright into the interior, some coastal clouds, especially for the first half of the day. Otherwise, we're back into the double digits in Borrego Springs. Still hot, but we'll call that a win as we're avoiding the big-time searing triple-digit heat. There is some moisture off to the north tied to this system. You can see it's staying way to the north, but if you look there very closely, there was a little fleck of blue, a hint of the first flakes of the late summer, early fall in the absolute highest elevations of the northern and north central Sierra. For us, it'll be a little cooler for Saturday, 78 here at the coast. We're going to warm back up a little bit by Monday, about 4 degrees warmer Monday than Saturday will have been, but a nice time here, mostly sunny skies every afternoon after those morning clouds give way to a brighter afternoon setup. Inland areas, we bottom out at 83 for your coolest high on Saturday, back up to 88 by Tuesday. A little bit of bouncing back and forth into Wednesday then. And into the mountains, we're stuck in the 60s. Good time for a hike. Don't forget the sunscreen. You can still get burnt out there, but it is going to be nice and cool. Deserts avoiding the triple digits on Saturday, back up to 102 Sunday, and we're going to be real steamy once again Monday and Tuesday at 106. For AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, what's next for the presidential race now that the two parties have wrapped up their national conventions? That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Every Friday, you can get our most popular stories of the week. It's one of the newsletters offered by KPBS. We have many others, including daily headlines, KPBS Arts, streaming picks, and our North County focus. Go to kpbs.org and look for the newsletters section at the top of the screen. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That saying could basically sum up the women's movement fighting for equality. The Women's Museum of California carefully and lovingly cares for historic artifacts in their new home at the San Diego History Center in Balboa Park, which is where I got a look at some of the most precious items in their collection. So this is the new home of the San Diego Women's Museum.
Yeah, we are now a part of the History Center, yeah.
How does that feel? How does it feel to be here?
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's fantastic. Because, you know, when you have such wonderful things, all you want to do is be able to share them with people. And the world comes through Balboa Park, as we know. So it's very exciting.
And in fact, you have so many great things to show us. Yes.
The Women's Museum of California's collection is one of the most significant collections of women's history in the country. We're very proud of that. So this banner ended up hanging in the home of a leading San Diego suffragist. It's really one of the jewels of our collection.
It's very exciting. Yes. And it says the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any states on account of sex.
That's right. That's right.
And this is a little booklet on songs and verses for the suffrage movement.
Yes.
That women would sing along to.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And similar to that, this here is a compilation of speeches. So these two items are really tools of the trade. Mm-hmm. You know, it's Instagram for the day, you know. This is one of my favorite books. This is How We Won the Vote in California by Selena Solomons.
What does this inscription mean to you?
What it means to me is that when you're fighting for the right thing, never give up. Yeah. You're going to make me tear up, Maya. And I think the bonds of friendship that obviously sustained this movement, and Selena Solomons wrote, likewise, the heart of one who wrote this book. Yeah. This is a postcard of a woman putting a star on the women's suffrage flag. And California was the 6th one to put the star on.
That is a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
This is a publication when California became the 6th state in the Union.
Yes. Hurrah for the 6th state and a free West. Yeah. It really gives one pause, doesn't it?
Yes.
Oregon next.
Oregon next.
Oregon next, yeah. From the fight to gain the vote, to actually voting, to then being elected to office, to being voted for. Here we see Dianne Feinstein, and we see Barbara Boxer, and we see Lynn Shank. Lynn Shank was the first woman from San Diego to be elected to the House of Representatives.
Yeah. And now you can see the arc of when women had no voice to
exactly
the strongest
to
voices.
The strongest voices, exactly, exactly. Something from our costume collection. What we have here on the left in the blue is a reproduction of what's called the Bloomers, the Bloomer outfit from Amelia Bloomer, when women were just fighting for the right to wear trousers.
This costume essentially was created in protest of wearing skirts and dresses.
Yes, it was. And it's associated with the earliest parts of the suffrage movement going back to the 19th century. So we're sort of bookended here.
Because they can wear pants with these, and so it was let us do what we want kind of message, right?
There's a lot about clothing and freedom that goes on for sure. So let me take you upstairs.
So we're entering into what you call the cage.
Yes, this is where we store our collections. And I'm happy to give you a sneak peek into this area. As you can see, we've got more things than we can fit into this space. We have the whole range of things from everyday wear to the most formal and most special of gowns, like a wedding gown. We've got an extensive collection of purses, handbags, makeup kits and accessories. We recently discovered that we have a Givenchy gown from 1958 that was worn by a woman here in San Diego who was the head of the American Harp Association. This is a soccer ball donated by the Wave, signed by every member of the Wave. This is an example of collecting happening today. This is a history museum, and so we're talking about things in the past, but we're documenting the present for people 20 years from now who will want to see this. In order to imagine ourselves in the future, we need to know what we were before, and that knowing the stories of the women who came before will empower and inspire girls and women to fulfill their passions and their dreams and become the people they're meant to be.
A truly wonderful collection, and you can join the Women's Museum of California and the San Diego History Center on Saturday, August 24th at 4 p.m. to commemorate Women's Equality Day with a special screening of the documentary Fannie Lou Hamer's America. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.